because they keep they were talking about putting it online. So I called Comcast,
Okay.
and they
And
admitted that
you and I didn't talk about this before tonight,
No.
right now.
No.
Okay, this is all
I'll
not,
brand it.
not scripted.
I
Okay,
called
this is
Comcast.
all,
I
this is a
called
real
Comcast.
thing. This is not like a planning meeting for the Springfield plan. Okay.
Called Comcast, they said, first they said they didn't know the
Had no
nothing
idea
about it.
yeah.
Then they found it, and they said, well, you had to have not had cable for 6 months and owe nothing to Comcast. And the people who don't have cable who owe nothing, because Comcast, as in my experience, doesn't understand bookkeeping and constantly screws everyone's accounts in. The people who owe nothing and don't have cable, you know, is a relatively small part.
Well,
of
most
the
of them are on
population.
witness protection plans. And they've been relocated from another state.
So you're right, they just got from charter territory or something.
Yeah.
So we couldn't find anyone through that out of all we had like 10 kids that this kid knew that didn't have cable at home. We couldn't find anybody eligible for the program.
So they consider it a promotion like all of their other promotions?
Well, they were
'cause that's
gladly-
the
they were
It
criteria
is a
for-
promotion. We filed more than 50 complaints that this is unfair advertising to the FCC. Unfortunately, the FCC, branch of the government, Obama administration, this is our hope, they actually turn over our complaints to Comcast for response. You know, I mean, this whole neoliberalism problem, I mean, we keep saying what neoliberalism is, and what it really is the, you know, the devolution of public responsibility to individuals. Simply put. So there's no enforcement. It's now on individuals. I mean, it's just like when you read your Springfield plan. It's volunteers. It's individuals need to get up on their rights better. And, you know, it's all how we as individuals can somehow make government work. Well, yeah, we are fundamental, but that ought to be fundamentally taking power, not fundamentally doing all the sweat equity, doing all the work, and still not having any rules, regulations, or enforcement behind what we do. And it's the same thing now in Comcast. I mean, there's no way to get on the program. Yet, they did well getting NBC Universal. I mean, they're doing fine. They reported, you know, huge revenues last quarter. But this is all, I mean, so the only thing we could find to file a complaint on was unfair marketing and advertising. We're filing those regularly to the FCC. Eventually we'll get them removed, just because we're not going to quit. But this is just wrong. So when you say that, I mean, yeah, I mean, internet should have been, could have been, might have been helpful here if we could have gotten on it. And now Springfield could face the same problem we're facing in New Orleans. There's a new house-owned paper, and this came out last week, and Mobile and Birmingham are also new house-owned papers where they're reducing to 3 days in print, and the rest of the time is the new digital world, as they call it. So you could all be reading your newspaper here, whatever the Springfield paper is on the internet, and I don't know how that's going to work for you. It's not going to work well for us in New Orleans.
Paper here is called the Republican.
Republican. Yeah, I mean, I lived here. It was the Union, Springfield Union.
Well, back then we had three.
Yeah.
Union News, Union, the News, Daily News, and the
He's older
Republican.
than the party.
But the Republicans swallowed them all up.
Well, you got to admire a paper for telling the truth. At least, you know, that part of it's clear. But, yeah, I mean, so the internet could be, but, you know, and that's what you have to do in preparation, too. The one thing we supposedly learned in this high-tech land is, I mean, why not scan our home, our deeds, our birth certificates, the you know, baptismal certificate, all the stuff that we lose in a disaster, you know, and you can walk in with a portable scanner and a half hour later, you've got that somewhere where if you know, Lord help us, something happened to you in the lower Ninth Ward again, all your records, all your insurance papers could be right there on a file. Somebody could get, maybe you could get in the public library or whatever. We never could get that funded. But I'm sure here in Springfield, a much richer city than New Orleans, y'all are already taking care of all that too. We have to start thinking about these things as community solutions. And for all the talk about pretend input and these faux, you know, theatrical performances called planning, they're real things that we in unions and community-based organizations and other institutions can do that have huge impact, that allow people to come and have their records reproduced and get a file or get a, you know, a $2, you know, hard drive. It means that you've got something behind you, but none of it substitutes for what the organizational capacity can do in a fight. And unfortunately, most people look at disasters as sympathetic situations as opposed to the, what they really are, which is huge community struggles for what the future might be. And families are part of the pawns that are caught in the middle of that. Other thoughts and comments? Questions?
Well, I had this question. Now, did Sarno have to go to FEMA? If he said, no, we don't want FEMA in here, did he have a choice? Did he have to go with FEMA or not? And if he didn't, would we be better off?
I don't think he had a choice if he wanted the resource.
Yeah, I think it was the governor that declared it a disaster, right? And then FEMA got involved from that point. But yeah, people needed resources, and it was amazing. Going to these long-term recovery group was what they called, like all the United Way and volunteer organizations that were helping out. It's a good thing FEMA was there, because they would talk about these warehouses full of donated supplies that they had, and they had a plan that was it was many, many months before they were going to hire a case manager who would, and so the group was working on coming up with a job description and for a case manager who would have volunteers that would find out what people needed so that eventually they could tap into those warehouses of supplies available. It's just the thinking about how we help people after disaster was like, wait a minute, how about just let people go to these warehouses and get what they need?
But we had disasters back, we've had disasters, 50, that last flood, we had some big flood. Now, we didn't have FEMA,
Was it declared a federal disaster or not?
No.
I mean, you've got to be declared a federal disaster to get federal emergency assistance administration money. So if the governor doesn't have enough clout to get the president, because FEMA is part of the executive branch, if they don't have the clout to get it done, you don't get the resource. But no mayor anywhere in the country has the power to decide, even in Arizona, where it's very popular to do this, if it's declared a disaster and you're FEMA eligible, no mayor, no county sheriff can say, no, the people who live here are my people, they don't, in this plantation, they don't get federal assistance. So in that sense, the mayor could not have had the authority to decide, no, people don't get the assistance.
Well, we did have a disaster here before the tornado, and that's where, again, the long-term recovery group, they were very clear that the only disaster that we can't deal with any of the issues that were before the tornado. It's just, the deindustrialization of the city, the fact that, more than a quarter of the population is below the federal poverty line, the fact that there's, in some of our neighborhoods, including the ones that got hit by the tornado, there's majority unemployment. So, the disaster that preceded the tornado was what put people into these substandard houses that are multifamily, neighborhoods and complexes that got destroyed. And then again, it keeps coming back to the imbalance of power in the city, and just the fact that once you said that the people that are there in the shelter, they have quarry and credit problems. Politicians they weren't going to be publicly advocating for those people. It was like, oh, okay, we already got the people settled that we could get
Let's call it what it is. They're on the tax base. Well, if you weren't on the tax base,
and the voters rule.
And it was racist. It was flat out like the first, and including the Red Cross. The first day that we showed up there, we started hearing the comments from the Red Cross volunteers, and it was just, these are people that just survived a tornado. People, they can tell you the story of how they had to hold on to their kids to keep and lost everything they had, and then you've got these people saying like, oh well, the food's fine, it's better than what they normally eat, and people would overhear these comments about, well, are we going to need body armor to go in there, and and just saying stuff in front of
That's
people
all
and
common.
their
That's
kids.
all exactly what happened in New Orleans. Barbara Bush shows up in the Houston Astrodome and says, well, no problem, this is better than how people were living in New Orleans before.